Jack Thornton on the Iron Mindset podcast. So, you are here for multiple reasons. One is Adam Phillips, Gar Ben, and Alex Cremens all have been like, you need to get JT on. And then for my own sake is I've listened to both your episodes of the Odyssey podcast and thoroughly enjoyed them. So I thought it was about time we got you down here in Dublin and sat in the studio. So you're very, very welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me, man.
Of course. And like I said to you before, and I know we've been chatting here for about 20 minutes anyway, but I think you can offer so many unique perspectives for people that maybe aren't aware. Not only are you an athlete that's represented the country internationally, you're also a coach. You coach former guest Don Stacey, who is almost about to pop a baby, you know?
Yeah, and still training.
Yeah, she's still getting it done. It's actually so lovely to watch, like how she's like posting about it and how well she's getting on with it, you know? And I hope it breaks some of those stigmas and stereotypes for people. But not only are you those two things, athlete, coach, also a referee. So you know the sport from multiple angles and you know from multiple sides. So I definitely want to pick your brain on some of it. But the first thing I want to know is, how the hell did Jack Thornton end up in powerlifting?
Oh, God. So it's more or less the same story as everyone else, where it's like sport, blah, blah, blah. But I guess the only major difference was when I was... So I was kind of forced into a lot of sports because I needed to, for like just a condition I had when I was diagnosed as a kid. So when I was like 8, I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, which loads of people know now. At the time, didn't really know anything about it. But like I had a super mild version of it because like obviously I'm fucking 107 kilos. Most people with cystic fibrosis wouldn't be. But when I was diagnosed, that basically they just said to my parents like, he'll be fine as long as he like, you know, takes the medication, you know, supplements, whatever, like vitamins he needs to that he wouldn't get because of the condition, and then like basically had to be active. So I was thrown into every sport until like one stuck, and you know, just did them all. Really did like soccer as a kid, did athletics, doing like cross country and stuff like that. And then also did like rugby in my like teenage years. And then got into weightlifting and then powerlifting after that. So really the thing that kind of drew me to weightlifting more than the other ones was because being able to like track the metrics, do you know what I mean? So like I really enjoyed just seeing the like the actual number go up, like just like a video game character, do you know, like just
gaining
seeing
stats,
yeah, exactly, gaining stats bit by bit. Which now that I've seen everything and like there's more like technology, now that I've been in training for so long and I've coached people, I realized those stats exist in pretty much every sport. I just didn't know they were there. Like even when I was doing like athletics and running, the idea of getting a stopwatch and like tracking your time, like I used to turn up to these like meets and just run, do you know, like as in you go to the training, do whatever the trainer told you to do. And like, you know, whether it was 100 meters for that day or if it was 400 meters for another day, you just do it. And like, never even dawned on me. Obviously I was so young at the time. I was like, you know, 12, 13, 14, that kind of like region was like the eldest I did that. But like, it never even dawned on me. So like, I feel like I could have probably got hooked into that as well if I did that. But yeah, just really got into the kind of tracking metrics of it. And then I guess that was like the peak. I was like, maybe I got into the gym when I was 18 and then probably only started powerlifting when I was like 22. So like I was very into like YouTube. So like watching like Johnny Candido or whoever else, Mike T, TSA were I think much bigger at the time, like, or at least they were releasing like loads of content and very like thoughtful content. So yeah, I just kind of got absorbed into it that way. Like Greg Knuckles, it was strength theory at the time, but it's stronger by science now. So I used to read that a lot during my co-op. I used to copy and paste his full articles into like into Word documents.
Yeah.
So I could just read I could just read like it looked like I'm reading like a procedure or something, and I'd just be like reading his article. But yeah, that's pretty much how it started. And then I joined City Gym. From there, because at 22 I knew I wanted to compete, but I didn't know how really, and I didn't want to be that person who like turns up and does everything wrong. Do you know, which is nothing wrong with. like as long as you keep going, it's fine. Like you'll learn the hard way. But yeah, I just wanted to I just knew it would be much easier to start powerlifting if I was around people who knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
I can answer my questions in person straight away rather than me kind of guessing it and like going off of videos and going off of, like, say, if I did an Irish PF comp at the time, who knows what like comp tutorial I would have looked at on YouTube. Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't have understood there's different federations. I wouldn't have understood. Like maybe I would have like just not known, oh, you can't, what do you mean you can't use knee wraps? Do you know what I mean? Like, or what do you mean like all these little things? So yeah, just getting an understanding. So I trained there for maybe like 3 or 4 months, did an in-house meet, and then did an actual powerlifting comp then in like January or February of the following year. So yeah, like that's pretty much it.
It's like this nice slippery slope the whole way in, and then you get there and you're like, well, I guess this is my life now. This is what I do.
Yeah,
but
to a degree.
I think so many people though in Ireland have that experience. Like, now obviously we'll talk, I do want to know a little bit more about the CF, the cystic fibrosis, but they it seems to be this pathway. You kind of get into field sports, you kind of gravitate towards something more physical like rugby, that gets you into the weight room. Like Melvin had talked about it when I feel like I'm doing like a city gym tour.
See, that's the thing, yeah.
And then it's like, you know, you get into the rugby, you find out you like the weight training more, you go hard on that, you're actually quite strong, you're a physical person, you get into, you find that there's a sport for that called powerlifting. So I suppose you just had like your own version of getting there. But let me ask you a question about the CF, if you don't mind me asking. When you were younger, did you have to use like a nebulizer or anything like that? I have a friend who has had it, and she had it quite a bit more badly. So how does it affect your life at all now? Like, do you still have to medicate for it, or what's the story?
No. So I do medicate for it still. So no, I've never had to use a nebulizer because the whatever version of it I had, I can't remember I wish I had the actual diagnosis of it, but yeah, whatever version I had was pretty mild. Like I do have some symptoms of it, but and I do have to regularly, the biggest way it impacts my life is I have to take a couple of tablets a day, and then I have to go to like, you know, checkups every, I think it's like 3 months or 4 months, every so often basically. And then, you know, I get bloods done and all those, and like just the usual checkup. They check my body weight, check my height every time. They do all these little tests. But one of the things, like when I was younger, I didn't want people to know about it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, you know, especially growing up, 8, like, plus I didn't want, like, I guess other kids to be like, oh, that's the kid with CF. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the only way they know. And even like, I'm like 29 now, like, then to be honest, like, I haven't told like really anyone, like, apart from obviously today, I guess. Do you know what I mean?
Now everybody knows.
Yeah, now everyone knows, but like, I guess I didn't want to like, I didn't want to whore it out either.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't like, not ashamed of it or anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, then there's nothing to be ashamed of, you know, but at the same time, I didn't really fancy myself being a spokesperson of it. Do you know what I mean? Whereas so like now, I feel like, you know, enough people, at least in powerlifting, know me for loads of other things before that.
Yeah, like I didn't know this.
Exactly. But do you know what I mean? Like that's not why I'm being brought on even today.
Yeah, not at all, no.
Whereas how like, it's just a separate thing, do you know?
Yeah.
But it is like basically how I did get into sport, because like the main thing was, I suppose as a kid, the main thing was like, oh, I was doing all these sports that I have to do. Because I didn't like, you know, some of them, like, she just didn't give a fuck. Like, I just want, like, especially when I was being like a little like snotty-nosed little teenager, I just wanted to play video games and just like chill out at home. Like I didn't want to go to rugby practice on a frozen pitch. Do you know what I mean? Like I didn't want to go out in the lashing rain, but like I had to because it was part of like my health. Do you know what I mean? Like it was such a big thing where so I probably would have got, like, if I didn't have it, I probably would have gotten away with not doing it.
Yeah.
And then like I wouldn't have, you know, it wouldn't have been such a habit to be physically active. Whereas how now, like, you know, I don't know, like it's literally my main form of like play, I guess. Do you know what I mean? Like you know, I train really frequently, and like my parents or like, you know, relatives ask, oh, why do you train that much? Like, I don't know what I'd do if I wasn't. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just the idea of just sitting down, watch some, obviously I like watching like a bit of TV, but like, you know, once it gets past 2 hours, like I'm just completely gone. Like I couldn't do that for the day. Like if I finished up work at like 4:30 or whatever and came home and then had no training to do, I'd kind of be like look
Twiddle
around,
your
it's like,
thumbs
yeah,
out,
what am I supposed to do? Yeah.
So in hindsight, then you're obviously happy you did go out and play rugby on the frozen pitches and in the pissing rain.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely even like, and even where I am today, like, is in, I think, especially in those like, younger years, like you develop so much more when you have all these like hormones going through your body. Is like basically the gap between child and like adult. Like when you're going through puberty, like you develop so much more. So even like having a decent like cardio base and physical, like your physicality and all that kind of stuff, like definitely impacted by like training the whole way through that,
Yeah, there's a conversation I've had with a few people way back when I first started. I did a pilot episode with a friend of mine named Dave. He's a Thai boxer. And we had a bit of a chat about like seeking out like voluntary hardship. And I think when you're young, your parents can kind of push you towards it. And I think when you're quite young, obviously you know scope for why they might be doing it. So I just want to fucking go play my PlayStation or my Xbox. I want to watch cartoons or whatever. But I think it's only later you can kind of appreciate it for what it is, and it develops habits like, as you've done, you've carried into your adult life. And not only that, like obviously you're quite a prominent figure in the sport you're in now. So I think like those things really speak to what experiences you can have later in life. So, and also thank you very much for sharing your story about CF, because as much as I know you're kind of like down, like it is only a mild case, you're not like buckled with it. I think it's like that. I never would have associated that with you. I never would have thought. I thought you had nothing wrong with you. You know what I mean? I thought you were. I know it's nothing wrong as such. I just thought you were a big, handsome devil from Limerick that like smashed some big weights. But like, I think there's often times when you look at, say, things like social media or you see other lifters, it's so easy to consider that person just has, better genetics or an easier life or has had less hardship than you, and because you obviously know the scope of all the bullshit you've to put up with. But I think when people hear things like this, like as I mentioned, you've gone abroad. We were in Iceland together. You know what I mean? You represented Ireland. You got the green singlet, and you've done that, and while still working a full job, still being a coach, getting married, all these fantastic things you've got going on. But obviously, your resources, and not only that, you've still got to consider this. Mild as it might be, it's still a consideration to your overall health. So I think that stands to like. It's not so much about who has what or who doesn't have what, it's how much you can realistically manage. And it seems like you're managing things really well. So thank you again for sharing that story.
Yeah, no, I just thought it was important. Well, it was important to share, especially if we're talking about my training previously or going forward, because it kind of does inform some of the decisions I do make. Do you know what I mean? And it's something that like will inform going forward as well. Just as you get older, I guess you're kind of more conscious of like that kind of stuff of like, looking after yourself in in your 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's a testament, as I said, that you put in that groundwork when you were younger, and now you've found, I should say, a sport that you can prosper in, and like that, powerlifting's great in its way because it's a sport that is quite low maintenance. Like you can train for powerlifting and a whole load of other things, or you can hyperfixate on powerlifting. And I know recently enough you set up your own home gym, so you've removed so many barriers to being able to train, which is pretty dope. But I want to ask a little bit more about you as a coach, because I'm sure most people listening will be familiar with who you are as an athlete. They've probably met you at some of the local meets. But when in the time from joining City Gym and doing your own first meet, along that journey, did you become a coach?
Yeah, it was like, looking back on it, it was quicker than it should have been.
Okay.
Just because it was just that thing of like getting to like pure obsession from it, And I was also like finishing up like a postgrad. So I was kind of, which had nothing to do with fitness at the time. It was so I kind of wanted to do something different, especially for a couple of years. Like I never took like a gap year after school or whatever between college. Like I didn't want to go into like a career straight away. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, my designated career, say. So I wanted to coach. So I talked to Gary about it after maybe a year or a year and a bit of training in City Gym, and then we kind of got things kind of going. I talked to him about how to get set up, and then the usual things. I started taking people on for free, just doing like PT stuff like for free or discounted rates at the time, and then kind of built it up from there, and then was basically what was meant to be maybe see how this goes kind of thing. It ended up being nearly 5 years. And then it was pretty much, I only went away from it, like as in the PT side, like full time in a gym during COVID, because like naturally there wasn't PTs
No one
during
could,
COVID.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of thought, okay, this is a good turning point to start applying for jobs in like a more similar field. So I just started applying to like, different like finance related jobs and like science related jobs, basically anything related to maths. And then kind of took it from there. But I kept on the powerlifting side because that's the side that I kind of diagnosed, like I just objectively like this. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, I'd probably still coach a lot of the people I coach now. Well, I would coach pretty much all the people I coach now, even if money wasn't a part of it, or if it was like a fraction of it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's not what's keeping me interested in this now,
Because I know you said that actually when you were speaking to Adam and Connor recently on the Odyssey podcast, and Adam had asked towards the end that, are you still taking on clients? And you were like, if it's a good fit, if it's the right person. So I'd imagine you're at a point now where like, you've got a healthy career. So coaching is like something you're obviously very good at and something you enjoy. So it has to be a good fit. You don't want somebody who's going to become a pain in the bollocks. Yeah. But I would imagine though you work with a roster of very enjoyable people to work with. Like Dawn is the one that sticks out the most to me because I've had her here. But like, who are the current who's who of Jack Thornton's lifting roster, would you say?
Oh, like in what capacity do you mean?
Like so you've obviously coached from one-on-one PTs in the gym all the way up to like Dawn's an IPF world competitor. Like, do you have people, would it be like a certain cohort of higher level lifters you're working with now? Or is it just that you'd have to have like that conversation to see if it's going to be a good fit personality wise?
Well, so to start with someone, say, it would have to be someone really like personality wise, you know, or if I knew them prior, because obviously I know loads of people from the Irish PF. So like, if I had like really good exchanges and I kind of know the measure of someone more or less, then I'm happy to. And like, I'll upfront say, like, I'm not going to chase you for, like for feedback on your stuff, or like, I'll let you know how it works. Like, I want to hear more or less back from you every week. Like, particularly, I want to get an email at the end of the week. So you're completely like detached from like the emotional side of training. If you had a bad session, I want you to like email me at the end of the week so I can hear what you think now, rather than like, I like fucking hate that session, like my back hurts, blah, blah, blah. So I'll put in some ground rules, and then that's gonna like I've no interest in like hand holding people, anymore. Like, because when I was doing like personal training, it was kind of more like that. You are kind of the motivation in a way, like, because they're doing their best effort to turn up. Do you know what I mean? Like, and they're doing a great job of literally turning up, and then you have to inject like the energy and like get them somewhat motivated to get through the session. Whereas how like really with powerlifting is like, I'm much more interested in the powerlifting side now. I'm not interested in like hand holding someone to tell them you have to go to the gym today.
For sure. I think that's actually a good way to put it, because I would have come a very similar route. I used to do a lot of one-on-one personal training in FlyFit. I know you don't have a FlyFit in Limerick yet, but for like 6 years I was on a gym floor. Your average Joe Soap coming in. The motivation for them to come to the gym was because I've booked a session, and they'd be the people that complain about the training. It's like, you're paying for this. Whereas I think powerlifters self-select as like, I'm somebody who's going to the gym and I want to achieve this outcome at the end, and I'm hiring you to help me get that outcome. So I think it adds a level of like accountability from you, obviously, as the coach, to help provide the worthwhile information that they need to succeed, but them to treat themselves like an athlete, to like, I'm not going to tell you to go to the gym and check in if you're not arsed to do that, like, which is essentially the bare minimum. Like, you're probably not in the right sport, or you're not working with the right coach, or maybe you're not as developed as you think you are. And I think like that, I think as a coach, as you develop, as you gain more experience, having those non-negotiables is actually better for you, and it's better for the athlete, because if both parties know what's expected of the other, it makes the relationship way more prosperous. And sure, we can see that in, as I mentioned, like how well Dawn has done working with. Dawn sang your praises when she was here with me, both on camera and off camera. So I think that's a testament to your ability to get people to where they want to be. So let me ask, like, what has like been some of the biggest lessons you learned from being an athlete yourself, but also as a coach? Like, is there anything along the way that you would say like kind of differentiates people between being an aspiring new young powerlifter who wants to get into the sport versus, say, the people that have been in it 3, 4, 5 years? Like, what boxes are they ticking that these people could be paying attention to?
So,
not to put you on the spot.
I just don't want to give a junk answer at the same time.
For sure.
For like the new people, I always kind of think just slow down. like whatever you're doing, just slow down, because whether you're a young guy or girl and then you're not satisfied with your results, you know, like that maybe your friend is way stronger than you, it doesn't matter. Like if you stick at it and stay with the sport and get stronger over time, you'll be way less injury prone because you've done everything right. The person you're selecting that's saying, oh, like I'll never be better than them. If 10 young fellas join a gym, 2 of them will stick around in 2 years.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of cutoff. Like, as in, there's no point in looking at someone who's like, oh, they're unbelievable, like I'll never catch them. Most of the time, they don't stick around.
Yeah.
Do you know, that's like, it just is the case. Even if they're really good and get the external validation from others, you know, a lot of the time they don't just stick around. So like the better you can just kind of control your variables. Like if you want to go crazy and like put maximal effort in, it's not like necessarily in the gym you should be doing that. Do you know, like as in do the program that you've been prescribed, but then put maximal effort into like getting sleep or, you know, your food correct.
All the boring stuff.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Because they're like, oh, I have to put max effort into this squat single. Do you know? And then they're absolutely bollocksed. And then their back off work is dog shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, or like, even worse, they jump maybe like a 20% jump in like 1 week. And then their knees are instantly sore. Do you know? Like their volume is just jumping from week to week, or their intensity is jumping from week to week. And their body can't handle that stress yet. And then they're just injured straight away. And then the obvious one, I probably jumped this one. I probably should have said this first. Get a good coach, basically, to start off with. It doesn't need to be the best coach in the world, because, you know, but like your first coach, it should be someone, I think, who like understands training and like understands workloads, and like that's a pretty important thing. Has a decent grasp of technique. If you're just starting out, ideally someone in person would be great, because that's like really useful, get instant feedback. But whoever you start off with doesn't need to be your coach forever, so don't overthink it that much. You know, like you don't need to, you know, to your 2 weeks into powerlifting, you don't need to be a flex boy. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't need to jump to some, you don't need to like just jump all these steps, you know? Because like, say one of those international coaches are probably great, but you do kind of have to have like a certain level of like your own understanding of training and your own like ability to, okay, what are they trying, like to understand the coach's program without them having to like really handhold you through it, you know? And also just to be able to kind of listen to your body a little bit, that like if you're gone through like half the week and your lower back is still sore, like your quads are still, if you lasting pain, maybe like the workload or the intensity is wrong. If you don't know to convey that to your coach, you know, on time or early enough, you know, they can't adjust, and then it kind of does lead you down a bad road of like either just poor performance in training or something worse, you know? Yeah,
completely. They're actually 3 very, very excellent points, and very poignantly made. Jesus Christ, trying to get those words out. I think I completely agree with that idea. I think a lot of newer lifters see much higher stakes in what they do in the gym, you know? Like, and I see a lot of it right now because there's a local gym I train and it has some powerlifting kit in it. And I'll do like a Tuesday and a Friday session there. They're like our main days and abs are Thursdays and Sundays, deadlifts and squats. So like the Tuesday and Friday are a bit more pliable. But if I'm in there like on any given Tuesday, you know, there'd be some young lad who's like, he's not paying for anyone for coaching, but he's after buying himself a brand new pair of rigor mortis knee sleeves to try and match his comp max 2 weeks out on a squat that he misses. You know what I mean? And it's like, man, there's no stakes to hitting this in the gym. Why waste the effort now? But I just don't think they can see it because the time frame isn't the same. Whereas like if you've gotten like even like say like an athlete like yourself, like you've competed like probably like what, like nearly 24 times at this stage, probably getting up there in the high 20 comps, like you've been, the amount of warm-up rooms you've been in even as a coach, like, you know, whether for your own athletes domestically or internationally as a coach, the amount of experience and time you're in the sport, I think you kind of start to realize why would I go in here and break my bollocks for a single just for an Instagram video? You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. So I think that's actually an excellent point. And I think a lot of, when I say young lifter, I don't necessarily mean like a junior. I just mean anyone new to the sport. Because I've had this conversation with masters lifters, you know what I mean? Who are like, how am I going to go from deadlifting 140 for 5, 12 weeks later, I meant to hit like 180 or 200 for 1. It's like, trust me, you know what I mean? You don't need to rehearse your lifts before you get onto the platform. But I think that's a poignant point to make, that we don't have to, rehearse lifts. When we say young lifter, we mean novice lifter, somebody who's newer to the sport. And then the second point, I think about talking about getting a coach. This was a conversation I've seen online a good bit, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because I think there's this pushback of like, somebody does one meeting, they're a powerlifting coach, haha, LOL, me. It's like a meme. And I get it. I do think obviously there's probably a point where it's like, how much applicable experience do you have as a coach to deal with a person? You know what I mean? You're not just sending them a spreadsheet necessarily. But I also think there's no problem with having lower tier coaches that are just creating opportunities for new lifters to get into the sport, who probably they might not have as much experience, they might not have as much knowledge, but have an abundance of time. So they can probably give this person a lot of their time. Like we talked about, when you're newer, you're in your more formative years of either being in the gym or competing, you probably do need more time with a coach, more time one-on-one, maybe in person, maybe doing things like practicing commands, hitting standards, even understanding some of the rules of the sport. So that's where a newer coach could be significantly better than going to like fucking Sean Noriega or Joey Flex, who you're one of probably like hundreds of people that like you would need. And that's not to dismiss those coaches. I think that style of like, you know, touch and base once a week works when you're extremely like your self-efficacy is really high. Yeah. So I think that's a really important thing. But what's your stance on that? Like, you've got these like newer coaches. There's an abundance of new online coaches, you know what I mean? But I do think we need some lower tier coaches to get so people can dip their toe. Definitely. And then when they're ready, they can probably take that step up. What's your thoughts on that? Because you've been around the sport a good long time.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Just like the lifters, you know, the coaches that pop up, you know, and they like, maybe those coaches, like it's coming from the right place. You know, they're just really interested in a sport and they just like the idea of coaching. They want to like dip their toe in just themselves. Yeah. And they'll throw up, they might make an Instagram page, they might throw up a post, and that's kind of where it starts and ends. Like, anyone really who joins them is their friend, or like, no one, say like if it, whatever, not calling anyone out, but say like if a 18-year-old or 19-year-old just like, you know, they've done one meet and they just want to start coaching, if they throw up a story, the person who takes them up on that is very different than the person who takes up like yourself, myself, or like anyone who's been in like the sport for a long time or like has any kind of name. They're either looking for an extremely reduced rate, you know, or they don't really care, like, or they don't know anything about the sport, so they're just kind of going with this person. And like, in that case, if it's a slightly more advanced beginner coaching an absolute beginner, then it's not that bad, you know. But usually especially if there's at the start, you know, because I started coaching people for free, so usually it's just a person, you know, a teenager or like whatever, a real novice coach will coach a bunch of their friends for free. Yeah, you know, like, and like that, those friends trust that coach, you know. Yeah, and it's mostly due to their friendship, they trust them, but it's kind of where they start, and like, that's completely fine, you know. Like, it's not taking any food off of like any more like serious or like more involved coaches' table. So it's like those people that are working with them never would have come to you in the first place.
Exactly. I like that. I've said that to people a lot in the past, that that's not taking your business. They were never coming to you. They're with their mate because their mate's not charging them. Or they're charging them like 30 quid a month or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's a good point, because like that, I would much rather somebody be with a coach that's their mate, or a coach that they like because they have a few Instagram followers, and maybe they're not the best coach, but they're giving that someone a degree of structure, and maybe that's the opening that person needs, that in the long run, let's say they stick around in powerlifting, like, maybe I should join City Gym, maybe I should join Abs, maybe I should sign up to Jack Thornton or Iron Ian or whoever it might be, like Alex Cremins or Garben or Jay Farrant or Toaster or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I think it creates that pathway in, and I don't think it's good to like gatekeep. You should only go to these coaches, because frankly, a lot of people are fucking broke and they don't necessarily want to pay the rates that the like top coaches charge. So I think having people like that either provide a certain amount free or at a greatly reduced rate who are trading that off for more experience is probably valid and a good position to be in. But if you were, again, working as both an athlete, a coach, a ref, all these different things, what do you think are some things people should be looking for in a coach at all levels?
For me, it's that that the person isn't so busy that you're just a number. Because do you know that kind of thing of we're talking about the coach with like 100 lifters?
Yeah,
that's something I always feel really concerned about. Just because, like, I think a coach should always have a cap.
Yeah.
You know, like even in my case, like I haven't hit the cap, but say I think 18 to 20 is where I would stop. You know, like especially with like my job, I don't feel comfortable really going above that because I feel like there'll be more weeks where it's really hard to get back to everyone, or like that even like the amount of comps that I have to go to, or like all these other things, just the amount of attention I could give each person with my own job and my own training, which are both extremely important. You know, like I still regard the job's important because that's what pays the bill. And then my own training is almost as important to me. So I don't want to sabotage either of those for another 10 clients and get more money.
Absolutely,
you know?
yeah.
So it's not worth it. It's just not worth it to me. Or like say that the time I spend with like my friend's family, my significant other, like I don't want it to pull from those either. Like obviously my 20 or whatever, or my 18 cap, it could be completely different for someone else. Someone else might be very capable, like they have a system that like 40, 50, 60, 70 might be completely fine. And especially if you like work this, if this is your full-time gig, then it makes all the sense in the world to be increasing that. But just, I guess if you can get in contact with one of the person's clients and then like hear their story and their recommendations, because if someone's good, like the client will tell you they're good, you know, like, or they'll tell you their experience of it. In particular, like active clients, I'd really go with that more because, you know, everyone has a client who left for mad reasons. Do you know what I mean? And like their interpretation of reasons might be different to the coaches and vice versa. And so the truth is always kind of somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Whereas how, at least if you go with a client they're currently working with, you know, I think they'll be more honest.
I 100% they would be. I would agree with that a lot as well, because I think what I think happens a lot, right? I'm sure you've probably had this in your own experiences with many different lifters over the years. Anytime I've taken on a lifter that's come from another coach, or if we have a Zoom or a consultation or whatever in person, it always comes down to communication, right? But like a lot of the time, I don't think it's necessary that, because I don't think coaches genuinely go weeks and weeks without ignoring their lifters. Now, I'm sure some of them do. I'm sure some of them just completely neglect the role. But like to me, that maybe they're not that invested in it, or like that maybe they got overwhelmed or burnt out or whatever. I'm not going to make excuses for those people. But I think it's important that as an athlete and as a coach, you are very honest with, as the coach, what the person can expect, and as the athlete, what your expectations are. Because I've had it in the past where people be like, I say to people, like, I send you a check-in at the start of the week, right? And then throughout, I have a work phone. So throughout the week, if there's any deviation from the plan we've laid out in the check-in, you can text me at any time, but you just got to give me some time to get back to you. Now, it'll always be within a day, but like, I'm not always going to be able to reply instantly. I could be sitting in a podcast with Jack Thornton. I could be doing my own training. I could have forgotten my work phone, which I do sometimes. But the point is that I'll always make the effort, but that's contingent on the person making sure that if there's an issue, they reach out. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what it's for. It's why I have a second phone. But then I'll always make that abundantly clear, because in the past, people say, well, I got a check-in from my coach, but then I didn't hear from them for a week. And I'll say, well, did you contact them? No. It's like, okay, so this is the problem with expectations versus reality. Yeah. The onus is on you as the athlete to say something has deviated from the plan.
Yeah.
Like whether it's positive or negative, and you need coach input. Great. Speak to your coach. But the coach can't mind read. You know what I mean? They don't know how the hell your week's gone. I like your method. You were saying like you want an email with the week broken down objectively, not subjectively, take some of the emotion out of it, and let's like delve into the data. What can we learn from this week and apply that going forward? I think that's a smart way to do it. So yeah, oftentimes I think when you do have this breakdown, it's the expectations versus what's being fulfilled has been thrown off. And I think even if you're an athlete, if your goalposts move, that's fine, but communicate that. Like if you, like for example, I'd imagine you don't do a whole pile of in-person one-on-ones anymore.
No.
So if somebody says to you, Jack, I want in-person coaching, you're going to go, well, then I'm not the guy.
Yeah.
And that's fair.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's a massive piece of that. And I think that's good advice though. Like vet the coaches. Like I encourage people to do this. I'll say if I have a consultation, I'll say, talk to my other lifters or talk to other coaches. Go and shop around. Find who's right fit for you. Don't just go with me because I'm fucking sound. Like, you know what I mean? Until you start working with me, then I'm not, you know? But let me jump across a little bit here then. So you've had some outstanding experience as an athlete and a coach internationally, right? So you've coached many of Ireland's top athletes internationally. You've gotten to wear the green t-shirt as the coach, but you've also gotten to wear the singlet. Have there been any like really standout moments on either side of that stick out to you, both for yourself and as a coach? And then do you have a preference between being the coach internationally or competing internationally?
I definitely prefer the coaching internationally. For me, like I don't know, I guess maybe it's because I've done it more and it's like a longer experience and it's more prolonged and more like, you know, it comes around 2 or 3 times a year. Even though I've enjoyed my couple of times in the Irish singlet, some of the weird things, like it does feel weird putting it on, I guess, for the first time, because like even if you're confident in yourself and think I could get there, do you know what I mean? I can get there eventually, you know. It still is kind of surreal putting it on because you're like, even if you thought you'd get there eventually, you didn't think it'd be now, like, or you didn't think it'd be at that time. So, but there is something different about, like, I guess the coaching side of it, because you know you can hit a lift and you can be super happy about it. You can watch it, you know, 100 times. But like there is something about like bringing someone through like a perfect day or whatever, or like get them to help, like basically just help them to like even meet their expectations or exceed their expectations. And those are always the ones I kind of remember the most, you know, like. I trade those for my own any day, you know, because like I had a great time at this most recent Westerns, but there's like individual performances from Worlds, Euros, whichever, that I just kind of value more to me, you know, like even recently, like just being there at Euros with like Cian Madden for his perfect day that had been eluding him for so long, you know.
Yeah, he smashed it.
Yeah, like in spectacular fashion, you know, but like those kind of things, like, and he was like, you know, fulfilled from that day, you know, and like even though I did base very little, you know, because as coaches it is the lifter doing everything, and it was him sorting everything out. It's cool to be part of that, you know.
Sure.
Other like little medal battles, like they're so exciting, you know. I remember the first Euros I went to. I was lucky to be with Jay, helping handling Janine Martin, who was like the first. I think she was the first Irish Open lifter to win a weight class. You know, so like this is the first time in the Open we've heard like, you know, the national anthem and all that kind of stuff. So like that was like unbelievable. Like how spoiled I was for like my first international. You know, and then there's obviously others like, you know, for, you know, because they used to do sub juniors, juniors, and Open all together, or masters, sub juniors, juniors, and Open together. But there was loads of little kind of sub juniors and junior things that were dotted in between, you know.
For sure.
And even seeing like some of those sub juniors, like the first one I went to was, I think it was Andrew Blackwood's and Andrew Rowe's last sub junior comp. And now they're in their like last year of juniors this year. You know, like that's really cool. Like just to see someone like that stick around. They were good. They were really good at the time. And now they're unbelievable now. You know, like
those two guys, incidentally, as you mentioned, Jesus, it's been crazy to watch how they've like developed in the sport as time has gone on. You know, because I think it's very common to see like really like upcoming bright stars in the sub juniors, and then particularly if they stay around into their junior career, you're like, wow, these guys could be really, like, don't get me wrong, they're both excellent juniors. Like, geez, these guys are going to be great if they stick around to the Open, but they don't seem to be going anywhere. If anything, they seem to be picking up steam. Like, it's crazy to watch how they've developed as athletes, obviously as young men, and doing their own podcast now, the two Andrews, you know, which is another, like, I love that. That's where Irish powerlifting is going. You know what I mean? Like that, we've got these guys now that have been in it for so long. They're so entrenched in it with such a depth of experience, and they're like 23.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
No, it's crazy. Like, because as you said, they've done loads of comps in that time. You know, like they didn't really, they were young fellas as well, where they kind of like took the foot off gas to travel or whatever for like periods of time. But there was always that kind of like every year it was always like just that march forward, you know? And, it's kind of hard for someone who takes, it can be hard for someone who takes up the sport, say in college, and they're like 19, 20, you know, and they look at the likes of them.
Yeah.
But they've been doing it since they were, Andrew was, I think he said at weight training, Andrew Blackwood, I don't know the story with Andrew Rowe, but Blackwood started, I think, when he was like 14.
Yeah.
And I didn't know him at the time. I was actually at his first comp in Sligo as well, which was like, when was that? That must have been 2016 or 2017 as well. So it was like a similar year to when I started, you know, like when I started my first powerlifting comp. So like he's like they have this huge base behind them already, but they're just so young. Even like internationally, like everyone was talking about, Austin Perkins, like he's so good for a junior. Like he's only 20, but like he'd been lifting since he was 14, like doing equip lifting since he was 14. He's like, you that can't be replaced. That time, that slow build over years, that can't be replaced by anything. Like no matter how motivated you are to like be number one at the end of the calendar year, it's just not going to happen.
But I think what's great about it for us, like looking forward, particularly as coaches even, and people like a lot of investment in the sport, is to see that realistically tested powerlifting in Ireland is still quite young in its current form. 2015 the Irish PF was founded in its current form. Like that's less than 10 years old. And then look how far it's come in that time. And we've got phenomenal athletes like that, lads that aren't even in the open yet. Like I think if you were to fast forward 5 years from now, or even 6, like say you get to 2030, I can only imagine that even for such a tiny island, there's such a great cohort of incredible powerlifters and really, really excellent coaches as well, that I can only imagine what another 6 years of development would be. And those two guys kind of stand out to me at the kind of forefront of that, because not only are they like really good lifters, but now they're becoming two very prominent figures publicly for the sport as well with their own podcast. So I'm very, very excited for that. But let me ask you then about something else. So recently enough, you got the position of Open head coach. Congratulations in the Irish PF. That's absolutely outstanding. Obviously, last year with Jay Farron stepping away, there became an opening for a reshuffling, a changing of the way the head coach role was done. And frankly, I think it was a good decision to have an individual coach for each of the divisions. So if I'm not mistaken, it's yourself as the open head coach, it's Jen Harrington as the Masters head coach, and Alex Crements is the junior head coach. Am I right in saying that?
Correct.
And then, am I right in saying that then you will be selecting your own teams to bring abroad? Something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, Jen is a national team manager as well, so she kind of helps out with that kind of stuff, of course, as well. Yeah. Even I'd much prefer that to even for someone to have a once over the list to see, you've missed this person, do you know? Because it's so easy to happen with all the comps that happen. It's very, very, very easy, or like and also to run by like criteria or like standards, or these weird cases of like, say this year, like previously it was done on nationals. That was the comp that mattered. But now that there was no nationals really, because they moved nationals, there's no nationals within a year, say, of one another. It's nationals from February down to nationals in November. So there's 2 sets of international comps. Is it fair to have that nationals kind of qualify, the February nationals to qualify you for 2 years of comps? Personally, I don't think so. So so talking through things like that, and make it the most make it like the fairest way, because like that's the biggest thing. Like I want like really I want it to be as meritocratic as possible in the way that makes the most sense. Obviously, once we get back to a normal schedule of nationals is every 12 months, that'll be all taken away. It'll be very easy. But trying to keep it as meritocratic and like as transparent as possible is a big thing.
Well, I even remember when we were all heading to Iceland last September in the lead up to it from being selected. I know Jen was really on the ball with making sure everyone was on the same page with their kits, with their flights, and like organising the shuttles and things for us like that. So like I think having somebody with that kind of experience on side is fantastic. But yeah, I think it's phenomenal that you became the guy to get the role. I think it's a fantastic decision to have those split up, because you can then really focus in on your team, who you're sending where. But how did it come about? What was the process like? Because obviously, like I've had the guys on from the USAPL Ireland panel podcast. I've had a couple of conversations since, and obviously I want to get your take as well as we go on. But from Jay stepping away as the head coach, and then I believe there was like an interim period, and then there's obviously been conversations and discussions, and this is the route that went. How did it feel to be the guy to were you asked to take the role? Did you put your name forward for the role? How did it all come about?
Yeah, so a few things. So after Jay stepped away, I actually did throw out the idea of basically doing this, because I wanted to be able to help out. But if it was a case of all or nothing, I knew I'd never be able to do that. You know, like there's no way, even if I had the holidays, I couldn't take all those holidays to do that. And especially like I work in financial reporting. So, I'm extremely busy every quarter end. So the idea of taking holidays for that is just not feasible. So we had to split it, like for me to get involved, we had to split it up. So it was great that they did take me up on that. And also the teams are enormous.
Yes.
You know, like it's crazy. Like it's so, because you're doing an injustice to each team if you're putting them all on the one person. Because the advantage of one person is things can get decided very quickly, because there's no need for any discussion. Someone has complete autonomy. They can just say, bop, bop, bop. That's it.
Yeah.
Whereas how so many lifters, it's so easy for a lifter to fall through the cracks if there's one person looking over potentially how many people do we send internationally a year? It's probably in the region like 50 to 60 plus, you know, because you could have a potential of near 20 for open. I think Jen said something absurd, because you have all the age divisions for masters. You can potentially send like 80 or something like that. You know, like how can one person look after all these things?
You'd have to raid the retirement homes in Ireland to send enough M3s.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Someday. Once the M3s get TikTok,
it's game over.
Yeah, it's game over. Yeah. But
have you seen my lifter, Mary Fusco?
Yes, I have.
Mary's flat out on the old Instagram shorts and all. She's fantastic.
Yeah, I remember her doing compensation before. She was lovely. Like,
she's a gem. She's doing Masters Euros now. By the time this goes out, this episode, I think she'll have competed, but she's in flying form, so I'm excited to see that. But sorry, incidentally, you were talking about the selection process and how people could fall through the cracks if it wasn't divided up the way it is with the scope of the number of lifters we send.
So that was the outside of my own reason why I wanted to split up. That was the major reason, is like just more time and more like manpower is put into, you know, each team.
Sure.
Should make it better. Should.
Well, let me ask. Sorry, I know I'm interrupting your story altogether.
Don't worry.
I wanted to ask then. I know there was a conversation around, so in 2021 or 2022, I think it was 2022, there was a decision made to make an A and a B standard for the open division, right? I believe there was one for the juniors as well, but I don't think there was one for the masters. I can't remember all the details. But I don't think necessarily there was pushback, but there's definitely like a questioning of the rationale to set the standards. Like they were very, very high, which at the time I was very much in support of. I thought it was a good idea. Like we want to bring the standard up in the country. But in many ways that led to a lot less people going abroad to some of the bigger meets. Like we only sent a team of 4 to Worlds, and we only sent a team of 2 to Euros in 2023. Like, for the country's representation, and I think it's fair to say, like, obviously you might not just want to send people like as like token participants, but for the visibility of the country abroad, would you see that being changed or upheld, or what would you say? And obviously if there's anything you can't discuss, I understand, but just incidentally, as the open head coach now, do you think the standards should be the same, or should there be a degree of malleability there? So we have lifters, I will selfishly say from my weight class, like Beck Phillips, outstanding lifter.
Yes.
Like, who is going to probably be one of the main players in the under-93s in years to come. So I think him gaining more international experience would be a benefit, even if I believe the B standard was like 775 or 777 or something like that, and his is 762 at the moment, I believe. But like, where do you stand on that, if I'm not spitting too many details?
No, I think the standards were a little bit ahead of where we were, and that was intentional, you know, because like you raise the bar just because you want people to meet the bar, do you know what I mean? Or just like to push people to get up to that point.
Sure.
And that was, you know, very reasonable. The only thing was the A and B. There was no real need for the A because the B was already so far ahead that there was like I think 2 or 3 lifters maybe were hitting the A. And it was just a case of if you get to the B, then you were basically going. The problem we had with it was, although we were getting maybe 12 people that could hit the standard, which is great, you know, like you'd love to send a team of 12 people, you know, like that's because that's the creme de la creme of, you know, our lifters, you know, we want to send them all, but they're all turning it down. And that was for like various reasons of, you know, financially, they didn't, you know, a lot of people, there's kind of this thing of a lot of people didn't see the value of doing like a Worlds or a Euros if they're going to come like, you know, 8th or 10th or whatever.
You spoke a little bit about this with Adam and Connor, right?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I'm not sure. Yeah, but
I'll say it all again.
Yeah, they didn't see the value. They didn't see the value of it, you know. But there's so much more to going to internationals than that, you know. There's because like it's all the people you meet. Like this, especially now with internationals, how they've kind of upped the game and made it made kind of like a primetime session in the evening.
For sure.
And like those comps are like a stark difference. They're so different to what they used to be. You know, they've done away because they've split up the juniors open and masters. Now for like, I know for open comps anyway, it's just a single platform. It's so streamlined. It runs like clockwork. And generally they're run extremely well with some exceptions. Do you know what I mean? There'll always be some, but like, you know, in particular Worlds after Sheffield, it's such a noticeable, like they put their best foot forward to make one of the coolest comps I've ever been to. Even how they had the crowd was like, they had this huge function room, but they had this tiered seating that was shoved like as close as the IPF will let you get to the, as close to get to the platform. But it completely changed the room. You know, it made so much more sense, you know, because people were arriving before the primetime sessions an hour beforehand to get a good seat.
Amazing.
You know, like that's the kind of stuff you want. Like people would arrive, like, obviously, people would arrive in with a load of cans, like, you know, and like people would be just drinking cans in like at the front of which people don't think of for the IPF, but like they really tried in that case, or someone tried anyway. Some meet director.
This was Malta, right?
Yeah.
So the guy I know Adam and Connor, and shout out to them because they obviously do really good previews and reviews for these things, which I appreciate because, like, you know yourself, there's so many moving parts in the world of powerlifting now, and like particularly for me, like I'm quite involved with the AB series, so like getting their perspective on some of the international meets if I can't see everything is really, really nice. But the idea they were saying the Malta meet directors for the local federation, whoever hosted it, said it meant that the competition was a fair bit rowdier than your usual IPF international meet. It was good crack. The location was obviously beautiful. But I think what brought it home there for me is just that the lads are going in with a few bags of cans. Like, that's top notch. Like, that's mwah.
Yeah, you get those like cheap little cocktail cans, you know, and like just having those out the front. Everyone was doing this. Like, it was the funnest Worlds I've been to because everyone like talks about how sterile it is, you know? And like, I think even some like, it's never going to be the same as like, say, Sheffield, because I wasn't at Sheffield, but from what I've seen and heard from all the lifters, like it was like nothing else, you know? It was like a proper like sport event, you know? Like they were like booing the judges for giving certain, you know, like imagine that at a powerlifting comp, you know, like like they were completely on the lifter's side every time, you know, and there's a lot of stuff like that with sport that like I wonder will powerlifting develop into that, you know, because you know the like good sportsmanship stuff in powerlifting. I wonder will that ever like deteriorate to be like a like a soccer crowd or like a rugby crowd where actually rugby is much more respectful, but you know where like they're just hurling abuse more or less, you know, or like just shouting like things like choke if someone's going for a deadlift, you know, because like I feel like everyone was quiet or like they're really all supportive. But imagine if a crowd like some lifter you didn't want to get it, and they were already talking shit to him in the crowd. You know what I mean? Like that would be a weird experience. But I think some people would thrive off it as well.
I'd
you
love
know?
that, man.
Yeah, it'd be really weird and interesting, wouldn't it?
But like, I mean, I suppose though, like it's one of the things I think is like as much like don't get me wrong. I do think IPF meets can be a bit sterile, but I don't think that's bad. I think it's only so meets like spectacle meets like Sheffield can exist because there are more clinical meets. So you can have rowdier meets that are like about the, you know, everyone knows that moment at the Sheffield meet where the guy was walking. What was the guy's name who was standing there with the real intense look on his face?
Jonathan Keiko.
Yeah, so everybody remembers that moment, right? And it had nothing to do with lifting weights. It was just a cool moment.
It was.
And I think those things can only exist because they're exceptional. They're outside the norm. It's why like the videos that Motion Masters make for the ab series are always so cinematic, because that's the point. It doesn't matter that, you know, Fernando Arias pulled over 400 kilos. It matters that there was this really cool cinematic moment with the fire going out and like people walking out in slow motion, lifting these massive weights. I think that those moments can only exist because there's this other version of powerlifting that isn't quite that.
Yeah.
And this exists in its clean, pristine state because you've got this really rogue element over here. And I think that's kind of where like in the modern day, like we know we have everything going on with like Article 14 and things like that. I think that's the problem, is that both of these things can coexist, and that's good. They don't have to exist despite each other. They can exist in harmony. But obviously the issue is there's only ever going to be discord when you've got people believe one way and people that believe another, and they won't work together as best as they can. But I suppose that's like a big pie in the sky thing that we can discuss, obviously, but like it makes no tangible difference what we think, really.
Yeah. So from Sheffield, it was very obvious that the IPF for Worlds, they identified something that it's like, oh, people like having fun. Weird. So then they kind of made it a little bit more fun, and like
Sure.
I guess they gave the crowd a little bit more leash than previously, you know. But I do wonder what it'll be next Worlds, what they do, if it's the same again, or if it's like more towards let's have a bit of fun with this, you know, like it could be massive, because like that'll draw in way more lifters, you know. But if they go, no, it has to be professional, we want the sterile atmosphere, then it'll be all the weight will be on kind of Sheffield's shoulders to pull people in, you know, to pull these big lifters in, which it absolutely is doing. It had one showing, and like the absolute exodus from other federations into the IPF, which I can't get over. I suppose as well, like monetarily, that kind of draws people in as well, and especially if the Americans feel like they can just kind of waltz in and just take the money, then why wouldn't they? You know, exactly, yeah. Just why wouldn't they? But yeah, circling back to Irish powerlifting specifically, I do kind of hope with that, the comps being better atmosphere and just run extremely well, and just being incredibly comfortable experiences to compete in, like completely professional. Like it's like, I think it was at Malta, it was like you might have 10 people warming up, and there'll be like 8 racks, like 8 Alico racks, exactly the same as what you have out on the platform, same carpet, same everything. Huge room. Like this one was in like a 5-star hotel, you know, which is absurd, you know. I was in Malta, they seem to be kind of gravitating towards more idyllic locations. Granted, I think Adam was telling me that the place in Lithuania is like a small town outside Lithuania, but we'll see once we get there. We'll see what that particular Worlds is like. But yeah, it is just a case of getting those 12 to accept and actually go. But saying that, I still think we will, I think, be dropping the standard slightly, and we kind of have we haven't published them, but like for selecting for Euros, myself and Jen kind of went through this. Myself, Jen, and Adam, I liaised with Adam a lot on it, of just pulling down the standard slightly to make a bigger net, just so we'd have, if someone turned down a spot, we'd have a reserve that.
For sure.
And it's trying to find that balance between, because everyone knows there's certain lifters, you know, they're an international lifter. Do you know, like in Ireland, like they wouldn't, no one's head would turn if they were invited. Like, you know, Beck, you know, like no one would question it if he was going to Euros, you know. Granted, the 93s is one of those weight classes where we could put any standard we want, because there's just so many dudes who are like at the top. There's, what is it? It's like, I think it was like Toaster, Keane, Damien, Matthew, then Beck.
Yeah.
So like, it's just, you know, being wrong place, wrong time kind of thing, like wrong weight class, wrong time.
But I think that's what I love though. I love that it's a stacked weight class, you know what I mean? So it's like don't get me wrong, it's simultaneously like sweet and bitter for me because I compete in that weight class, you know what I mean? And like I would consider myself pretty good, but these guys are fucking like next level good, you know?
But if I had my druthers, I'd love to be able to send, because we can only send 2 per weight class. If we don't send someone in a different weight class, like unfortunately someone misses out then. You know? Like I'd love to be able to send all 3, because we don't have, say at this Euros, I don't think we have anyone in the 83s, and I don't think we have anyone in the 74s. We have one person in the 66 and no one in the 59s. But then we have like basically a reserve 93 that in all like just should be going. They're good enough to go. Yeah. They should be going, but we can't because they're just rule set. So that's just, we're kind of caught with a short and curlies there, like, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose, but that's like a good problem probably for you to have as the open a coach. Like I've so many strong dudes I can send here, like, you know.
Yeah, but I'd rather they were moved into different weight classes so I could actually send them, you know. Yeah, definitely. We don't need to worry about the 93s and 105s. We'll basically have people for those
all the time, yeah.
But the rest of the weight class, it'll just take time to fill them out. The other thing we ran into the whole time was our juniors, our class. You know, like they're just really high standard, you know, as we're talking about with Andrew. Like in some cases, our juniors were winning our Open Nationals.
Yep. So
they were getting the number 1 spot for Open Nationals. And then they'd go to Junior Worlds, and then they wouldn't go to Open Worlds because, you know, they're only like 2 or 3 months apart.
Yeah.
Or they just want to prioritize their junior comps because obviously they want to compete against their peers.
Yep.
Which, you know, you can't hold anything against them.
Of course not, no.
But it just puts us in a position where it's like, well, our best lifter just went to a different comp. Do you know what I mean? Like for, you know, because like on the women's side, I think it was like at Nationals, Jody and Alyssa's were top 2, was it?
Yeah.
Ali? So like juniors, like, so it was only Ali going.
Yeah. It's like a blessing and a curse because naturally, when they do get into the Open and you've already got these extremely experienced, highly talented and very, very strong lifters that you can pull from. But like when they're kind of riding the line between being an Open, being in juniors, I do think, they'll probably be right to prioritize your junior comps, not only because they only get to do that for a fixed period of time, but they're probably more competitive there. Like the Open's a big, bad world, you know? So I think they're probably better off doing that for the time being they can, but obviously that leaves... it can leave gaps in other spots then for the Open. But I think that then probably that's like an opportunity for people listening, that you've got these weight classes that need some more strong dudes in them, which say 59s, 74s.
Yeah, well, basically anything that isn't 105 and 93.
Yeah.
There is there's like space there, but it's also most dudes after especially in the Open, after years of weight training, typically they're heavier than 83. Yeah. Do you know, like obviously some aren't, but like, do you know, the average person,
that's the weight range they're going to be in.
It just biases that way, and that's completely fine.
Probably the same on the female side. I'd imagine you see most of your lifters probably somewhere between, let's say, like 63, 69 and 76.
Yeah.
Whereas like obviously you go down to like 50, what's it, 57, 52, 47?
47, 52, sorry, 47, 52, 57.
Yeah, 63. Yeah. And then like obviously the heavy, so it's like that with it's like a bell curve, you know, with both of them. Like those like middle weight classes are obviously going to be the most populated just by the nature of how people are built. You know?
It's also a thing of like, it really does feel like in both sides, on the men and the women's, like the discussion we're having of like, oh, I can't get these people to come, like they're just a bit off, you know, there's just this bit of a gap. I think that'll all more or less disappear if, you know, say if All of Ireland has just a decent training year, not even a good one, you know, like it's always like so close, you know, to be able to justify it, you know. I don't think anyone is that far away, and like, you know, like we can see them as clear as day coming up that there's loads of people that are like gonna take those spots eventually, you know, like you know, as we were saying, when Rowe and Blackwood and I'm sure Alyssa's already at the top of her game, like, you know, but when all these lifters all come through to the Open, you know, they'll just kind of be taking over a lot of the Open spots, you know, you know what I mean? And then it was the same with one of the girls I coached, Alicia. She also won the 57s, and then, you know, we're kind of trapped as like she wanted to prioritize junior career, which I absolutely agree with. And like I do think all those juniors should do that, because like if you win nationals here, cool, you probably might be in the B flight. Do you know what I mean, for open worlds or open Euros? Whereas how, you know, in the junior case, you know, you could be contending for like individual lift medals or overall medals. So like I'd much rather someone did that, you know?
Yeah. No, and I think it is even for them, for their own enjoyment, just to, because, you know, you only get to be a junior for a while, you know, so enjoy it while you can.
Yeah, and lift and celebrate with your peers as well.
For sure.
Because they're probably much closer to those people as well.
They'll
So
understand,
definitely.
like, they know what when you start saying for real on God,
Yeah,
they know what you mean.
Yeah,
We don't.
Yeah. Buzzing for real.
Yeah, we're boomers, like, you know. But so what has been like one of the biggest things you want to, like, so you've got your own little piece of it now that you can say, what can we do to like innovate a bit more, let's say, in the role? Like, because I mean, Jay was in that role for a very long time, you know what I mean? Obviously he did an excellent job. Ireland made a lot of fantastic impressions internationally, very well-known team. But like now you're running the open coaching, you're going to be at a lot of these meets. What is something that you want to like push forward for? Is it just that like better communication, or is it like a more clear pathway for lifters to know how to get selected, or what might it be? Is there any one particular thing you would like to see change in the selection process, or how people go abroad, or how that's communicated? What would it be? Like,
it's always going to be based off some kind of standard. So like there's very little you can do there apart from like just setting the right standard, you know, like that is reflective that it's far enough away that it feels like an achievement to hit, but then it's also not too far away that like it's leaving us with two lifters at a comp, like at an international comp. Like what I'd like to achieve in that amount of time, because I definitely won't do this as long as Jay did. Like Jay, 9 years or something like that in the region, in that ballpark. Absolutely not. I'm going to definitely treat it like a term, whatever that might be, 2, 3, 4 years, something like that. But I definitely want to leave it in a better spot than, you know, it recently was. Just that we are sending a healthy team every year and we don't have massive issues. How we go about doing that, I'm not 100% sure yet. Like, we've already sent a bigger team to Euros by being more flexible with standards. And I guess people kind of taking maybe last year off, they kind of have the itch to go back and do international comps. But I think more can be done, and I think more is going to be done. Yeah. Because as far as I know, from talking to Jane Jones, they were talking about doing interviews and stuff with like international team lifters. Great. I really do think like making a fuss of lifters goes a long way for the chances of them saying yes again, or if they don't, that you've given someone as well who has said no, trying to give them like FOMO for this kind of comp. You know, it's like, if someone's turned it down, then they're like the reserve or like the second person gets all this attention and clout and all this kind of stuff. It's like they kind of feel upset about that. You know, you want to make it feel like that's kind of the direction I hope it goes. You know, and I am confident in their ability to do something along those lines. You know, even if it's like small sponsorships or, you know, or even just a post now and then. Just something to make it interesting, you know, because SPD do a lot for, you know, they give Irish Powerlifting a lot just for us wearing a singlet. These unreal media packages, like even with Dawn before, they pulled her aside for an interview, and then instead of, you know, it's always like, you know, EDM music just playing over the lifts, it was her talking about like, you know, competing with diabetes and all that kind of stuff. It's like, I thought it was really cool. Like that was, you know, and especially like Dawn, it wasn't at that comp at Euros, like wasn't necessarily contending for medals. She wasn't a mile off, but she wasn't contending for medals, but they still took the time to interview her. For sure. To give her like a very individualized clip, you know? Which I'm sure she probably, like that probably stands out to her as one of the best moments of the meet now in hindsight, that she got to be, like there was a fuss made over as an athlete. You know? So I'm sure to her, like that stands out to her as well. Yeah, I really think so. And like they're so professionally done. From start to finish, and they get them pretty much within a couple of days, you know, which I think matters as well, because like if it came 3 weeks later, you've missed the boat, you know. Like, you know, actually, incidentally, I've been having this conversation with a few lads I know that do media around powerlifting,
And, you know, they make the video packages or whatever. And it's like, man, if like this goes past a couple of days, it's not relevant anymore. And this is why you'll see now everyone like screen records the live streams and post that as their comp review rather than waiting 4 weeks for a highlight video.
Yeah.
The highlight videos are cool, but by the time you get them, no one cares anymore. You know?
Yeah.
I think it has to be within that, like, maybe say 5 days if you're going to be like generous, but I think it needs to really be within maybe 72 hours for the person to consider it relevant. Or for the people that went to consider it relevant.
I also think for the average person, they mightn't be the most cost-effective thing. Because like if you're trying to build your following and all that kind of stuff, you know, whatever it is, 100, 150, 200 is like pennies. Do you know what I mean? In that regard, you know, it's totally worth it. You know, because you have this asset you can recycle and reuse. But if you're just a random person, like just posting it for the sake of posting it for the boys, like, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're doing comps frequently, the bill racks up very quickly. You know, just because even doing a comp, it can be expensive. Like if you're not from Dublin, you're doing a comp in Dublin, you have to pay what? Or say even in Limerick. I've heard the hotels in Limerick are ridiculous as well.
There are for some very odd reason.
Yeah, who wants to come here? But it's like, yeah, they're like in the ballpark, like 200 a night. You know, so you're already paying that. You're already paying your membership. You're already paying the entry fee of like whatever it is, 70 or 80 quid. Like. Comps get very expensive, and then at a certain point, like you've seen how you squat like with a load of weight in a montage. Like no one really looks at the weight that much, you know. Like I've kind of stopped getting them in the last while just because of that. Obviously, because I want to. Well, I generally compete 2 to 3 times a year, and unless I know this comp is going to be like a special one, then I might do it. But if it's just a regional comp, like I won't bother.
Yeah.
But obviously, if it's your first comp, do whatever you want to do.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Of course. Yeah, you might never do another one, sure.
Yeah, and also like if you have the money again, completely do whatever you want to do. Like it's entirely your thing, and support. Like that would be the biggest thing in my head to buy them in the first place is just to support the lads that are doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, this doing it so frequently, I don't know what could be the in between. Like maybe a reduced rate of like less expectations of the package.
Do you know what? Actually, do you know what I genuinely think the future of it is? Most people, because I've talked to Mark Stell about this, I've talked to Mario from Motion Masters, I've talked to Rodriguez, I've talked to Jacob who does the videos for Odyssey.
Yeah.
And it seems to be a lot of the time they'll send out this really heavily edited video set to music, and then the person will put their own music on it.
Yeah.
Or they'll chop the clips up. So I think that realistically, so if anyone does media is listening to this, just send them the raw footage.
Yeah.
Like Roddy did this for me after the Christmas qualifier. He made me a video, but he sent me a folder with just all the raw clips.
Yeah.
Because most of the time now, people are just throwing them into CapCut and making a fucking TikTok out of it anyway. Yeah. So if you can just get them really well, like high quality raw footage, they'll probably just pay for that. So it's less price, no editing on your part, just color correct it all, and then throw it in a Google Drive and send it to them like the next day.
Yeah, we're probably underselling the amount that goes even into that.
Oh, 100%, you know? 110%.
But like, yeah, as you said, like make it look kind of presentable, stabilized footage, and then just bang it out. Like I don't know if that's much quicker than doing a full edit, but yeah, if you're whatever, like because it's the same thing as like even coaching, like you know. I think more coaches should probably offer a very reduced rate that's like very, very low contact.
Yeah.
Because similarly, like that's what some people want, you know, and like, you know, you're just kind of, I don't know, filling a market there by doing that, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think that whoever introduces like a 60 quid rate or a 50 quid rate of like raw clips like that and has however manages to like, you know, build a system around it that they can do it efficiently.
Yeah,
they'll absolutely clean up that way. You know,
I'd say the majority of people would, because I think the day of video packages was kind of like maybe it's just powerlifting was like coming out of COVID, everyone was real excited. But then, like over the last couple of years, people have competed a good few times. Like, I don't want to keep paying like 100 quid for something that I'm going to wait 4 weeks for.
Yeah,
you know, and I think that's fair enough, especially as the live stream footage has gotten really good.
Yeah.
But I actually want to ask a bit more about. We're talking like right now, we're talking about the athlete experience, and that's going to become like a very big talking point on this podcast over the last couple of episodes, and what that means and how it's different between different federations. Like I've had people on from who'd have done international meets with the IPF and felt like they weren't treated very well. But then, like, you and I were in Iceland. I thought that was a fantastic trip. I thought we were treated really well. I thought the venue were very good. I thought the hotel was nice. The people looking after the shuttles and things were real nice. The venue staff were nice. Yeah, I thought it was a really nice experience. And then I've obviously always, I play a part in the AB series and how the athletes are treated with their media day, their press conference, their rehydration protocol, and everything that goes into that. So I can see, like, how these different federations or different organizations run these things. And then I know coming into this year, by the time this podcast goes out, we'll almost be on the eve of the debut of USAPL Ireland. And I know that's something those three guys, Ian Benson, Garben and Jay Farrand, have talked a bit more about, is how athletes are treated in competition. So looking now forward this year, and I always would say the Irish PF had pretty good athlete experience. And any time, like, I always felt looked after when I was at nationals, when I was at the Christmas qualifier. Looking forward then for the future of Irish powerlifting, what do you see it as somebody from the position you've been in? Again, you're an international athlete, international coach. You've refereed on a high level, and you work in City Gym, where Garben, one of the men behind USAPL Ireland, that's his gym. So you've a very intimate viewpoint of it from his perspective. What do you think 2024 and beyond looks like for Irish powerlifting?
So for Irish powerlifting, I think the lads are on the right track. As far as making, like, the athlete experience better with better venues and stuff like that. Because say, like, we didn't know how important a venue really was until, like, say, the Irish PF brought their nationals to that hotel.
The Radisson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, all these little things were unbelievable. Like, in February, to be in a properly air-conditioned, like, heated room with toilets accessible and, like, loads of space. It was such a luxury, you know? Whereas how, like, we'd just previously been in, you know, just in abs or in just gyms and stuff like that aren't set up that way. You know, it's like, that's never, when that building was being built, like, hospitalities were never really in mind. And then it's kind of been retrofitted to be that way, you know? And, like, the lads in all those, like, gym comps have done the best they can with their building, you know? Like, it's absolutely, it's that those few comps and few venues are the reason why the Irish PF have actually moved on and built to where they are now. If those didn't exist, it wouldn't happen in the first place. But yeah, I think the lads are on the right track as far as getting bigger venues that are more hospitality focused. But I think they're gonna, I have a feeling it'll be a slow take up to start, and they're probably gonna have to take it in the teeth. Do you know what I mean? It's just one of those things. Like, it'll be incredibly hard to, like, pull people over to the USAPL, especially with all this kind of unknown about, like, oh, what'll happen with Article 14? Like, am I allowed to go? What about my coach? Like, what happens then? After we see, I guess, after the first comp happens and we see the fallout or lack thereof, I think then it'll kind of, like, it'll take flight. Like, it'll spread its wings and take flight a bit. And then hopefully it gets enough traction that, you know, that I've always been a fan of the idea of the USAPL coming over, just because I don't, in what scenario is a federation having a monopoly a good thing? You know, like, in any business, like, what world, like, the only thing a monopoly helps is the, like, business. You know, it never helps the consumer, and all the lifters are the consumers, you know? So even if that means that because, like, the way it was last year, not that the Irish PF would have done this, but if the Irish PF decided we're going to triple our membership rates, it's nothing anyone could have done. Do you know, like, it's that kind of stuff. And again, I'm not saying that they did that or, like, that they were going to ever do that. You know, they're just using that as a outlier example. You know, so that kind of stuff, just keeping both sides honest and competitive, because, like, the way they stay competitive is providing the most value to the lifter in either way. So if the USAPL is maybe a bit more expensive, but then they're providing a better experience, then someone might say that's worth it, you know? Whereas how vice versa, if the Irish PF is providing meets that people understand and know and like, that they like the track of regional, national, and then someday international, if that's what keeps them motivated, I don't think the USAPL will be ever able to really substitute for that. You know, like, the the dreams of international track. I don't think the USAPL will ever really have that.
Yeah.
But as everyone who's talked about this has said, majority of people that doesn't really apply to.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to detach someone from that idea, because even if they never get to that point, it's that, I want to be where the singlet is what kind of keeps them going. You know, like it's the aim for the stars kind of thing. So it's impossible to detach the two. It's impossible to detach the two. But yeah, I think it'll be an absolute positive, just having more federations doing the right stuff for the right reasons. And then from there, we'll just have to kind of wait and see.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that sentiment. I think that's the biggest thing. Like I've had multiple people on all talking about this subject, and a lot of it is like the what ifs, all we can really do is pontificate on it until it's happening, you know? And it could, and I don't even mean USAPL Ireland, I mean USAPL internationally could just fall on its face. Like they could just have their base in America and everything else kind of falls to the wayside. That's a very real possibility.
Yeah.
And then the other possibility is that it does run to a very high level meets that does create an alternative international pathway in years to come. We just don't know yet. And I suppose it's waiting to see what happens with that. And it's this idea that there are probably people that are early adopting now, but I don't think it's a substantial number of the people that you would have considered faces in the Irish PF. I think the people that are and I'm air quoting, faces of the Irish PF are probably staying there. You know what I mean? That'd be like your Keane Maddens, your Emma McDermott's, like yourself, a lot of the people from all the other different gyms, that like the crew from Odyssey, a lot of the guys in City Gym. But like that, I'd say there then might be people who see it as an opportunity to become a player early on in an alternative federation, or just want to try something different. And I said this before, I think a lot of the time when people are picking their first competition or two, they're not picking it based on what label it's on it. They're just picking it based on where it is and when it is and how much it costs, you know? So, I mean, I know when I picked my first ever meet, I just knew there was I did the first ever AB series. I just knew it was in Dublin. That was why I picked it. I was like, oh, that's in Dublin. I'll do that, you know?
Yeah.
I knew the Irish PF was a thing, but I had no idea how you got into a competition So
yeah, that's a really interesting point, because I know in America that's a big part of the USAPL. So they have the USAPL and then PA, so Powerlifting America is the IPF branch of it. So that's the biggest part of what's stopping PA from taking off in the same way, because they just don't have the comps. Like someone might have to drive 4 or 5 hours just to get to a comp.
Yeah.
And then it's like, no, just do the USAPL, you know? Obviously it's flipped here. So they don't have the USAPL doesn't have the same foothold. But yeah, I think it kind of will come down to that, because say like they're having their first one in Dublin, you know, and I don't think there's comps in Dublin apart from the AB series. Really, because I think the only one they're doing is nationals.
Just nationals,
just nationals, you know?
This year, I believe, yeah.
And things like that, I think, will kind of matter. You know, if the Irish PF doesn't find a proper foothold for regional comps in Dublin, I think people will just do USAPL if they're in Dublin, you know, and especially starting out, you know, when it doesn't matter.
And I think I think though that was kind of a thing when people saw the calendar. They thought it was like a reflection of like the shift in the people involved in the Irish PF, that there was no competitions in Dublin. But in a way, I think that might be a benefit to the rest of the country. Do you know what I mean? Because I think I will say this as well. It was kind of like a bit of a sore spot for a while. There was a lot of people that gave out about like the toilets and abs and things like that, about what all the comps that were run there. But it's like, Habs was also just a really handy venue. Like I think people don't get that. Like same with City Gym. They're handy venues. They've got basically pre-built warm-up rooms. They've got like a platform and an easy enough setup for the platform. Now I know the lads in City Gym have to like do a lot of maneuvering, but Abs has like a stage built into the gym. Do you know what I mean? So it was very, very, especially coming out of COVID or even during COVID, like when we're in and out of lockdowns, like I don't think that's a factor people think about. Like everything costs money. You know what I mean? So if you have a pre-set up gym with a warm-up room pretty much ready built, and the guy that runs the gym is part of the federation and will set the gym up for you, like that's all like massive pluses when it comes to being cost effective. But like as we move on now and the Irish PF's branching out to all these other gyms, I'm hoping that gives lifters in like Galway this weekend or down in Tipperary, AJ Cronin's gym is going to be hosting a couple of opens later on in the year. I hope that creates more opportunities for lifters in those regions to say, well, look, there's a local meet now. I don't have to put off competing again, or another time I might be in Dublin or Limerick or wherever, or Belfast.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go to the one that's 10 minutes down the road. I hope that that's what that creates.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. Yeah, because that's exactly it. Because I think we're talking prior about the Galway comp and how it's been tricky kind of getting volunteers. Like anyone can really see that, and the reason the volunteers aren't there is because the competitions haven't really been there. That but it just takes going there for a first time, kind of again taking it on the chin and just kind of pushing through it, get the first one done, and then over time you'll develop those like lifter based volunteers. Like even if you get in, there's a comp in Galway, I'll do that one. You get like maybe 15 more lifters into the IRSPF from Galway that never would have started if you hadn't come to Galway. I think spreading it is great. Like obviously it's very handy going to these powerlifting gyms that already have equipment, because it's such a pain in the arse bringing like jamming bars across a small car and like filling it with weight, and it doubles the journey and like absolutely eats through fuel. And
never mind your suspension.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but doing all those things, like it's so easy to just turn up to abs, and then Jay literally has it set up in a way that you just throw out some chairs. Yeah, similar to City Gym. Now it was set up in a way where I think we just had to like move all the machines. So like just it's set, move around a plate tree or two, move some machines, and pull forward the main platform, and then throw up some tarps. Throw up some curtains. Then things are pretty much done. Like down to a fine art towards the end there, that we're getting it done in maybe like 2 or 3 hours with like a very focused 5 or 6 people. But and then bringing it to a hotel, like it's, as I said, it's unbelievable the amount of work, because you have to contact so many people to bring. You bring up this kit, we bring up that kit, we bring up a rack, we bring up whatever little things, and then because the hotel isn't set up for meat, you always forget something. It's always like, I remember they went the time before they went to Galway. It was like, I think was it TJ Reid or something like that. They had everything, and then they forgot the aux cord.
Amazing.
So for the first set of squats, I remember I was coaching Christine for his comp, and you realize when there's no music how quickly you run out of things to say. Like when you're shouting, there's only so many times you can shout, "Come on, Chris!" Or if you go too early, you just kind of have to keep saying the same thing over and over again. And like, because he squatted his first like 5-plate squat, like 275, in pin drop silence, and it was the weirdest thing. But like that's only happened once in the whatever 8 years I've been doing comps with the IRSPF. So I give him a pass there, but it's very easy to happen, Like,
and I suppose the bigger picture there is that, and I think it's something that oftentimes people always seem to run in, where they forget that like this is no one's job. Like the people are all volunteering for this, It's actually one of the things why I think like I'll always make an effort to thank the spotters and loaders.
Yeah.
Because like they're literally your last line of defense between you and getting absolutely crushed under a weight. Yeah. And I think it's a very because I do it at like essentially every meet I go to, and it can be quite thankless. You know what I mean? Because you're kind of just in the background of everyone else's moments. And it's very easy because you're looking at the referees, the audience are there, your coach is there, your fellow athletes, and you're just the dickheads that put the weight on the bar. Yeah. So I think it's like people forget that a lot of these jobs are people giving up not only their time for free, but they're also taking like, if you're a spotter and loader, you're putting yourself in harm's way in a way. You know what I mean? If you're a referee, like you said, you could be sitting in a freezing cold gym for hours, just have some dickhead get in your face because your red light is shit squat, Yeah. So I think it's like sometimes people need the levity to understand, yes, these people are doing this for the love of the game. They're doing it because they want to be here to help us,
Yeah. Just on the topic of like forgetting things, I remember it was like last year, I think it was, or the year before, at USAPL, like nationals, the big nationals, the mega nationals. Yeah. They didn't bring like fractional plates, so people couldn't set records. But it's such an easy thing to forget, Yeah. Like there's always the smallest thing. It's like I always think of it as like, say to comps, like usually I'll always bring a set of clips. Yeah. Whether it's internationals or like regionals now, just in case, because like a gym will have clips, but a sports hall that we're being brought into won't. So it's very easy for them to like forget one set of clips for a platform, or for internationals. The big thing is like, they'll only have the like calibrated collars, and they might be like 20 years old, they might be battered, like Yeah. So just being able to have your own clips. Bring your own clips. Bring your own chalk. Like, it's not a lot to bring, and it'll probably save you. But yeah, there's a ton of things like that that are so easy to forget.
Well, I won't keep you here a whole pile longer, but I do want to ask you one last thing for the coming year. So 2024, as I mentioned numerous times, coach, ref, international open coach now, and athlete. What is the next thing for you in this list? Is it going to be coaching internationally at Euros? Do you have a competition coming up? What's coming up next?
Oh, for myself, so I've kind of restructured things a little bit in my own head, you know, like, because previously it was like, oh yeah, like just kind of get to do Westerns, and like, you know, the next logical one was try and push and try get to, you know, one of the opens we were talking about, like a Open Euros or Open Worlds. But obviously, if I'm being coached, I'm not going to do that. I'm not even going to accept, like, say, a Westerns. So, over Christmas, I kind of spent a lot of time kind of thinking about like what I actually want to do, and I just decided that even with bringing it back to CF in the first place, for the time being, I kind of want to diversify my goals a little bit. So I signed up to do a 10K in June.
Oh shit!
Yeah, so
amazing.
Yeah, so I'm starting basically running like once a week, like very slowly, like, and very low impact. And then post March, I'll increase that to, you know, a longer run day and like a short run day, 2 days a week, and potentially increase that over time to 3. And basically try to learn how to properly train for like hybrid, like running and lifting, while maintaining, you know, a decent body weight. Like, 'cause I don't intend to drop like to fucking 80 kilos.
Yeah.
Because I used to run a ton, as I said, when I was younger. And even when I was 20, like I could run like close to a half marathon grand.
Yeah.
But I was like 72 kilos. You know, so I'm a lot bigger now. So it's a whole different ball game. So yeah, I've decided just to do that, to dip my toe in a little bit. And then once I'll still be powerlifting. I'll still do all the powerlifting movements. Maybe that might look like, you know, high bar squats instead of low bar squats, just to be a little bit less impact and a little bit less load. Just so I can put more of the stress in the joints coming through running rather than weightlifting. Bench and upper body movements should be all pretty much the same. And then deadlift, there shouldn't be much to change, because like my change, if I do come down in body weight, my deadlift typically feels better, just because I'm less in the way and stuff like that. And I pull conventional as well, so I don't need to keep up this kind of huge amount of like external rotation. So yeah, it'll be
interesting.
Yeah, it'll be a little learning experience, you know, that I think it's especially because I totally understand when someone's so excited into powerlifting, this all you have to do is powerlift. And like the cardio is bad, you know. And I remember I actually listened to the Jodie one where she actually does cardio, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't think people should be so frightened of it in this,
because no.
It is one of those things of like it was kind of demonized, like because I all my reading started out in like 2010, 2012. And like that was like T-Nation kind of bullshit. Do you know what I mean? It was and like bodybuilding.com and all this stuff is like, don't do that. Bad for you. You know, and all those things kind of lingered a little bit, you know, in some ways, you know. And
people use it as a crutch because they're not arsed
about doing it. Yeah, I think that's the main thing, you know. It's just whereas how like I just like being active, you know. So for the time being, I'll see how that goes. You know, and especially if I do lose weight, or if I'm planning to lose weight, even for like I'd be lying if I said I wasn't going to try and lose a bit of weight for the wedding, like, you know, in October. Yeah.
So they kind of coincide nicely.
Exactly. Yeah. It's much easier to goal set with running and weight loss versus just getting lighter and your lifts feel like shit. And then you would like, especially when we all identify as powerlifters so much, you know what I mean? It can be a real like hurt when your like squats feel like crap because you're lighter. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
Whereas so like if I'm getting better at say like, you know, plyometric work like pull-ups and dips and stuff like that, and getting better times and running, this is just becoming easier. It's a less of a bitter pill to swallow, you know?
For sure. And I think longevity in the sport requires that, like having goals outside of strictly a new PR total every single meet. You know what I mean? Because that's not going to happen. Jeez, I know it doesn't happen for me anyway. But like, I like that idea that like in this way, you're giving yourself a goal outside of powerlifting while still maintaining your presence and your training in powerlifting. And it ties into another athletic endeavor with running, and then has a residual benefit that you might come into your wedding a bit leaner, a bit more streamlined. Jack T.
No, there could be loads of residuals. There could be easier to reduce rest periods. So get through sessions quicker. They recover better between sessions. All these little things that we don't even think of. Just being generally healthier, you know. All these things are all kind of feeding into it, and I'd never pinpoint it to be like, oh, it's one thing I want to do. Like, if anything, the main reason I want to do it is because I want to do it, you know. And I'm going to let myself do that, you know.
It also essentially frees up your mental bandwidth to be focused on being the open head coach, because you're not so worried about your own competitions. You can focus on being coach first, athlete second,
of course,
at least in the realm of the weight room. But yeah, I think that's a really smart way to play it.
Yeah, and I still will compete because I still love competing. You know, I'm still signed up to do March. I'll let myself do the June comp and see how I am, see what strength wise, and then I'd love to do 2 runs this year at least. Maybe 1 comp and 2 runs. If I could flip between doing 4 competitions, so maybe next year, like maybe 2 powerlifting competitions, 2 runs, or 1 powerlifting competition, 3 runs, or something like that. I like to stay active and like working towards certain things, you know. But yeah, and it also feeds into the whole part that I was talking about at the start of like with beginners, just slow down. You don't need to hyper specialize. I know you love it, but it's the easiest way to burn out if you put everything into just powerlifting and you're just making the highs higher and the lows lower. Like, it's the rapid way of getting the hell out of the sport, you know?
It's about that. I've heard my favorite expression I've heard in the last couple of months for powerlifting is, it's not outlifting your opponents, it's outlasting them.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's a great way to put it. And I think doing this will actually inevitably keep you in powerlifting longer and probably have some great residual benefits how you approach it mentally, because you're going to be focused on something else. The numbers don't matter as much. And I don't know about you, this happens to me sometimes when I'm not thinking about a lift as much. I inadvertently make massive progress on it, like, because I'm not hyper fixated on the minutiae of every single set and rep. I'm just going in and getting it done, and inevitably it just trends up. So yeah, I think we might see the same for you. Sure, look, next time we have you on, you'll probably be built like a pepperoni. Like, yeah. Maybe you'll be one of your new 83 international lifters. Jack, it's been real. Thank you very much for coming on.
Of course, guys.